He was Mexico's most notorious drug lord and one of the world's most wanted fugitives. That is until last week when he was found hiding out in a modest hotel room in the Pacific beach town of Mazatlan. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was the head of the Sinaloa cartel, the organization responsible for 1/4 of all illegal drugs that enter the U.S. from Mexico. Since 2009, he's made Forbes magazine's annual list of the most powerful people in the world. His fortune, an estimated $1 billion. Guzman had been arrested before, but he escaped a maximum security prison in 2001 in a laundry cart, adding to the myth behind the man. Stephen Dudley is co-director of Insight Crime, an organization that focuses on research, analysis, and investigation on organized crime in Latin America and the Caribbean. He joins us to speak about the implications of this arrest. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
First, let's talk about this capture. 13 years on the run here, and what made this arrest possible?
Well, I think there's a number of issues. Probably at the top of the list is increasing capacity on the Mexican side, certainly cooperation on the U.S. side. But probably most important for the Guzman case is that over time, he has sort of lost political capital. The reason Guzman's organization is able to do what it does is because it has its tentacles reach into the highest levels of government. And it appears as if those connections have been broken over time for various reasons, not the least of which is political pressure from the United States. And he just doesn't have the protection from above anymore.
Is that because there's a different president now, Peña Nieto?
Certainly it has to do with the change in presidency, but it also has to do with a policy that began with the predecessor, Felipe Calderón, and the way in which he implemented really a full frontal assault on different criminal organizations. So rather than having what was at the time when Calderón came into office, 7 large criminal organizations, now you have something in the range of 80. So there's been a real atomization or a fragmentation of these groups, and the Sinaloa cartel was not immune to this process.
You recently wrote that extradition to the United States is unlikely and that El Chapo will not see the inside of a U.S. courtroom. Do you think that Mexico could successfully prosecute this case, or do you think that there's another chance that he could escape or be released?
I don't think there's any question that Mexico could prosecute this case. The question is whether Mexican prisons and the prison system itself is strong enough to sort of keep Chapo isolated from his structure. There have been many instances in the past where large, high-level criminal organizations have been run from prison. And will he escape or won't he escape? I think it's highly unlikely that he would escape. But having said that, there is a possibility, given his high-level contacts, that he would be able to maintain control and some command of his organization.
So what happens now with the other remaining cartels and even his own organization now that he is temporarily out of the picture? Is there going to be some sort of power vacuum? Will this weaken the cartels?
Well, this is a process that has been going on for years in Mexico, which is why there's so much violence. There is this process whereby these larger criminal organizations, under pressure from their own organizations, from rival organizations, from the government, from outside governments, have been torn apart, little by little. So you have a number of smaller organizations. The Sinaloa cartel, for instance, is called the Federation. It's called the Federation for a reason, because it works in pieces. It contracts out different organizations to move its illicit products from point A to point B. That process will continue. That process of fragmentation, atomization of these criminal organizations will continue. Sinaloa cartel will continue to fragment, continue to face these difficulties.
Well, you know, it's been said, adding to what you just said, that, you know, the drug business is essentially run like a multinational corporation, and it counts on the support of big banks in the region. Can you give us an idea of how these cartels run and how they will continue to run?
Well, I think that's just it. I think it's a nice analogy to think of it like a McDonald's or a Coca-Cola, where they need to have certain local contractors in order for them to do their job, but they have a sort of board of directors at the top that's managing most of it. They will partner at times with other organizations, be they licit or illicit, depending upon their ends, and they will also work independently at other times. But at all times, these organizations need to have the connections to local and national forces in order to do their job. And if those connections are broken, be it for pressure from the inside, from the Mexican government, or from the outside, from the U.S. government, then that's why we begin to see these high-level captures.
On the side, you know, the issue of drug legalization has been a pretty hot topic of late. You have Uruguay legalizing marijuana in that country, and you have U.S. states like Colorado and Washington legalizing it in their particular areas. What do you think that legalization will do to the cartels and the war on drugs?
Well, I think in the case of the Sinaloa cartel, one of their main revenue sources is from marijuana. So it does have a dent in the marijuana sales that Sinaloa cartel can have, in particular the United States. But the United States produces most of, or a lot of, its own marijuana that it does consume. So it's not necessarily going to have a great impact in that respect. The other thing to keep in mind is that these organizations have a wide criminal portfolio, and they will continue to expand their criminal portfolio. If they lose one source of revenue, they will add a different source of revenue. Probably the most notable change in what the Sinaloa cartel has done in recent years is to get more involved in synthetic drugs, methamphetamines, and other pharmaceutical drugs, which, as we know in the United States, is one of the main sources of sort of people, you know, consuming drugs are pharmaceutical drugs, Oxycontins and those sorts of things. So don't be surprised if they move into other types of criminal activities like that.
All right, Stephen Dudley, we appreciate your insight and perspective. Thank you so much for joining us here
Thank you for having me
on the show.